Hello, my name is Sam Hlatky.
And I'm Derek Evans.
We are doing a combined group presentation today. I am doing my presentation on healthcare and healthcare disparities.
And I am doing mine on gun violence in America.
Hi, like I said, my name is Sam Hlatky, and my topic is on healthcare disparities. What are healthcare disparities, you might ask? Well, they are a social problem that we see that can affect the quality of healthcare that a patient is receiving. And what they are, technically, are preventable differences that can negatively impact the patient's plan of care. To take this topic more in depth, I wanted to look at how healthcare disparities react, basically, with race and ethnicity. For my first article, I chose racism and discrimination in healthcare, providers and patients. What we did when we looked at this article through a conflicts theorist's eyes, technically, we saw that we could focus on different racial and ethnic relationships that can divide people into a certain group while maintaining a dominant group. What does this mean exactly? Well, basically this is how we get almost segregation, because we have the dominant group and people in the lower groups might be discriminated against negatively in healthcare. Okay, now a specific example I would like to highlight from this article is a story about a middle-aged African American woman who visited the emergency room. She had a painful condition, and she said that the staff did not treat her well, and it was almost like she was targeted for a person who was almost just wanting pain pills. Us as nurses have to rely on what the patient says and believe them as what their pain status is. And if the healthcare professionals don't act this way, then we could have altered treatment based off the color of her skin, which is unfair. One social problem or policy that I've highlighted that I would like to have is some kind of training to recognize the signs of healthcare disparities and differences that happen within healthcare. Another social problem or policy is to make a mandated reporter system almost. My second article, I chose Overcoming Disparities in the U.S. Healthcare. This article helps show the current healthcare disparities of people who are in minority groups, what they may face. When looking at this through a conflict theory eye, we can analyze the article and determine this article focused on race and ethnicity, and also while focusing on the socioeconomic status and geography of the patient. This article has many valid points that can prove healthcare disparities that involve race and ethnicity. One specific example is that it states that African Americans and American Indians or Alaskan Natives have the higher overall mortality rates, and that these two groups have almost double the infant mortality as whites. As you can see, there could be a difference that is correlated with these numbers being so high. And the next step they do in this article, they talk about the socioeconomic status and how this can affect one's healthcare. Those at the low end of the spectrum of the socioeconomic status might see worse results than them who are higher up and have more money to be able to afford the healthcare. A social reform that I would like to put in place is to start a government-funded agency that directly looks for trends and analyzes this in healthcare. Another social reform that we can add is to universal healthcare for all. I know this could be a hard thing to do, but we see places like Canada that have it, and it could have adequate healthcare coverage for those people who do not be able to afford it or just can't afford it. For my third article, it was a scholarly academic journal. It was titled National Racial, Ethnic, and Geography Disparities in Experiences with Healthcare Among. When looking at this article, there are many points that stood out to me. The first one that I would like to talk about is how Native Americans experienced some of the worst healthcare experiences, and following them were African Americans. This trend was what I tend to notice in most of my articles, and that African Americans and Native Americans usually tend to be at the top when it comes to examining healthcare disparities. A social reform that I would like to suggest is to monitor healthcare of those people who are Native American and African American, because these are the most highly targeted group of people that can have healthcare disparities against them and have differences that negatively affect the healthcare. And also, we just need to have constant awareness. Now, my final article, which is do racial and ethnic disparities in healthcare use vary with health? When I looked at this article, we can see that the healthcare system is benefited to almost benefit the majority rather than the minority. This being from the negative results that they found in how patients are treated. For us to create a social reform for my final article, I thought that it'd be good to audit certain healthcare professionals and the outcomes of certain patients. If there's any negative trend noticed, we can then alert the correct personnel to observe the situation and determine if there's any incident that is happening that can negatively affect the patient's health. Healthcare disparities is a big problem that I would like to be solved through the help of both patients and healthcare professionals. We can see many cases of someone of a minority group that cannot have the same care as those of the majority, and this is an issue to me. In conclusion, I hope that we can find the way to be able to fix these healthcare disparities.
How's it going? I'm Derek Evans. As I say again, my topic is gun violence in America. As we all know, in America we have an uprising of mass shootings, gang violence, and other related gun violence, such as police shootings that may be involved with a subject in a criminal activity, getting shot by police and blaming the police for doing the shooting. Well, let me ask you something. Do we have a gun violence in America, or do we have a people problem? The news seem to be very biased on, what's going on in the world and its gun violence. It's kind of seems like for a particular agenda to eliminate guns in total. But as a lot of law enforcement and military personnel know, that a good guy with a gun always trumps a bad guy with a gun. And without that good guy with a gun, that bad guy with a gun can do a lot more damage. So African Americans and Hispanics often see a high number and percentage of gun violence compared to the rest of our country. This then ties in to them seeking more health care for maybe, gunshot wounds or something of that nature, maybe a smack over the head with a pistol. Not sure. So, back in the year 1787, our founding fathers wrote the Constitution. Our Constitution, Second Amendment, is actually written for us to protect ourselves against the government, and is our right as legal citizens to bear arms and protect our families, our friends, and anyone that is in any danger. When did this stop? When did America not be America? We need to stand up for what's right and trump what's wrong. But I do agree that we need more gun control on people that have mental disabilities and shouldn't be having a gun. That then ties into when, after that, does the left stop with their gun grabbing or their bump stock taking, anything else. Pretty much if it looks like a bad, scary gun, if it's black, if it looks tactical, they want to take it from us. When most of them never fired a gun, when most of them never shot a gun, or handled a gun, period. It's very sad to see. So, now we look at places like Chicago and Philadelphia, who has the greatest gun control laws in our country. And they also have the most gun violence in our country. So facts is pretty much telling me that gun control and gun violence doesn't work. Okay. Also tying into that, the health care for these gun violence victims is also the highest in those two cities.
Again, my name is Sam Hlatky.
And I'm Derek Evans.
Have a nice day.